So good morning to those of you on the West Coast and good afternoon to those of you joining us to the East. Today we have a terrific panel of CEOs lined up to talk to us about the imperative to implement sustainability throughout your organization to mitigate risk and improve your bottom line. I'm Karen Burns, Partner and Sustainability Practice Leader at Sensiba, and I will serve as your moderator for today's discussion. As Amit mentioned, with me today is my colleague Julian Gervaux. He will be sharing with us an experience or two from his own background, as well as managing the chat. So do feel free to post your questions throughout the presentation. Sensiba LLP was founded nearly 50 years ago as a traditional CPA firm, serving primarily the San Francisco Bay Area. Today, we've expanded to serving clients throughout the United States and have grown our services to include the advisory our clients need to drive success in their businesses. The slide before you shows many of these services, including helping companies along their sustainability journeys with ESG metric assessments, GHG accounting, outsourced CSO services, impact reporting, and B Corp certification. Much of the work companies have done in this area to date has been completely voluntary. As recently as yesterday, however, regulation is slowly starting to take root. In October of last year, California introduced 2 climate bills aimed at requiring the largest firms that generate revenue from the state to disclose their carbon footprint and other climate-related financial risks. Yesterday, the SEC adopted rules to enhance and standardize climate-related disclosures by public companies. This effort will bring more consistency, comparability, and reliability to climate-related information about the financial effects of climate-related risks. If you don't meet the criteria of large or public, it's likely you have customers that do fit that bill, and it won't take long before you start to feel the effects of that trickle down. Thus, while there is a fairly long runway before these regulations take hold, it cannot be understated that all businesses, no matter your size, should begin preparation now. Investing in sustainability initiatives can be thought of like buying an insurance policy, since ESG risk is financial risk, much like off-balance sheet liabilities. However, while many believe that cash only goes one way out, our panelists will help us see the fallacy in that and how they've seen ROI from their initiatives. Now let's get into our panel and learn a little bit more about who is with us today. Will each of you take 3 minutes or so to introduce yourself and your company, and then a little bit about how ESG has impacted your operations, decision-making, or the market at large. Let's start with John, then Hannah, then Ahmed.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Sensiba, managing partner of Sensiba LLP, and proud to be a colleague of both Karen and Julian, as well as the rest of our team. I have been in my role for about 16 years, and as Karen mentioned at the top, we started off as a traditional CPA firm and still provide most of those traditional services. But over the last, probably half a decade or a little bit longer since we first achieved our B Corp status, our focus has really trended more and more towards sustainability. And as the general market is seeing, there really is nothing that's not touched by it. It's important to everything that we do. My personal backstory gives me which I won't share right now because I'm limited to 3 minutes, gives me a extra passion, I think, for all things that lead to clean air and clean water. So regardless of all the political stuff that surrounds this topic, I think everybody can agree that we'd like to have clean air and clean water. In addition to the environmental impacts, the social impacts of treating people well, recognizing the strength that comes from diversity and treating people fairly has been a hallmark of our firm. And I think regardless of whether or not people believe deeply in the various ESG metrics, I'm very encouraged that the marketplace is demanding it. There is no hiding. Bad actors will not be tolerated. I often tell people tongue in cheek that the only people that need to pay attention to this topic are people that need investors, customers, or employees. Everybody else can ignore it. So obviously I feel very strongly that there is just no avoiding it. And I am absolutely excited that there's no way to avoid just doing the right thing, treating people well. It's just good business. And as Karen mentioned, ignoring this or treating it less than seriously creates tremendous financial risk for your investors and for your company as a whole. Thanks, Gab. I better stop. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you for including me in this fantastic panel with an important topic. I'm Hannah Kane, and I started my journey in Denmark. Education is free in Denmark. I got 3 university degrees. I have had a business career, a political career, and taught at Copenhagen Business School. In 1990, my husband and I bought a one-way ticket to the US, and in 94, I came to Silicon Valley. And I have always been into trying to understand new things, innovation, but also physical products. And so I started thinking about what can we do with this technology in the supply chain. This was before supply chain was really a concept, but thinking about manufacturing and distribution and incoming product and what can we use technology for. And so that was the impetus in 1997 for me and some other supply chain professionals starting ALOM. So innovation using technology to manage supply chain. Today everybody says duh, but back then it was a really new innovative thing. The other thing was the strive for excellence. Can we create a company that really is top-notch when it comes to excellence, Six Sigma, or even beyond? And then the third impetus was, can we create a company that it does right by everybody in the supply chain? Whether it's employees, customers, everybody wants to do right by the customers, but suppliers and other stakeholders. And that's really what we talk about when we talk ESG, is that entire ecosystem, especially if we include the planet in that ecosystem. And for me, that's a given. So fast forward to today, we are working and shipping out of 19 locations globally. We are staying true to our roots and just published our second ESG report. And if I want to say one take-home value for everybody on the call here, it's the big question for everybody needs to be, why are you doing it? So John already said some things about why you should be doing it, and certainly the regulations, complying with regulations, which are very complex, especially if you do global business. It can be very, very complex to comply with. Then there's the reputational risk, also a huge risk. But then it's just the right thing to do. And that's where we come to this problem from. We want to do the right thing by the planet and by the people in our ecosystem. Thank you for including me today.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Ahmed Rahim. I'm the co-founder and CVO of Numi Organic Tea, and I've also co-founded and started a few other organizations, one including OSC, One Step Closer. And, you know, my fundamental principles of starting and being a part of organizations is what kind of impact is it driving in the world, and how is it driving change in new systems rather than trying to change systems. You know, I believe in Bucky Fuller's quote, you can only really create new systems for people to follow rather than trying to change ones. And, you know, with Numi, for example, we've become one of the largest organic fair trade tea brands here in North America. We are the first 20 B Corps in the whole world. So when B Corp launched, they really chose their flagship organizations that were really driving change 15, 16 years ago. And, you know, we've been around, my sister and I started it over 20 years ago. And, you know, we've worked with over 20,000 families and farmers around the world, given millions back to them, both through Numi and the Numi Foundation, through various philanthropic and efforts, you know, and the work in the list is endless, from education to their human welfare to healthcare, and just their everyday living, as well as, you know, back then, 20 plus years ago, organic and fair trade really wasn't on the map yet to the way it is today. Neither was ESG. So we really flagshipped and pioneered that. And and done so much for our communities here, even here in our backyard of Oakland, where we've given back to 20,000 plus inner city children through education and gardening programs and art programs for the lower income communities. And even during COVID, raised millions of dollars to take all the produce and food that was being thrown away and delivered door to door to some of the poorest families in Oakland. And through OSC, One Step Closer, an organization I co-founded with my partner Laura about 13 years ago, we do things now for the whole industry. Not only do we bring about 50 CEOs who drive sustainable businesses, but we've also launched initiatives for the whole food industry, including the Climate Collaborative, which is now has over 1,000 organizations involved, including the Unilevers and Danone's and Whole Foods, that really give them 9 areas to commit to drive climate. NUMI became climate neutral a few years ago, kind of also a little bit ahead of the trends and ahead of the needs of what this world is asking for today. We also launched at OSC a packaging collaborative, which is really driving sustainable packaging for big industries and big consumer packaged goods. And recently we launched JEDI around justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. This industry needs a lot more of it, and all of our organizations need to really think about what it looks like to have inclusive, just and equity environments in our workforces. So in summary, whatever I get involved in, I advise a lot of entrepreneurs and help start a lot of companies, some which we've started and sold, but others that still run. It's really how are we driving impact and change for the better of this planet and for all the people and species that live on it. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Amazing overview, everyone. You guys were clearly doing sustainability before sustainability was cool. So let's dive into some more pointed questions now. Have you seen a difference in employee attraction or retention as your business has evolved on its sustainable journey? Let's reverse the order now and let's start with Ahmed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being in the Bay Area is really an added plus because the Bay Area has so many thoughtful, progressive people that really are looking to drive change and work with organizations that are doing good. And, even in our values and our culture, we have, around celebrating people and nurturing growth and be the change. And, and as well as our overall what we call the NUMI way. We really want people to understand why they're coming to an organization like NUMI, and similar with OSC, and that we aren't here to just focus on shareholder profitability, but also all the stakeholders involved, including the employees in an organization, so that it creates the culture and it creates the values and the dynamics of why we work every day and why we show up, and that we go the extra mile, and that the decisions we make, again, might be a sacrifice to the bottom line, in fact, and really to do good, to give back to the planet and to the people that we work with and for. So, it is a very important, and I think NUMI and OSC and other organizations are attracting people that really want to create impact and put their time, sweat, blood, and tears into something that is beyond just creating a product or doing doing something in the consumer world. So absolutely, and the Bay Area is a great place for it, and it attracts such amazing people.
Hannah.
Yeah, so definitely it's a fantastic byproduct of doing the right thing here is the employee engagement. It's really blown me away how engaged our employees are in our sustainability initiatives, to the extent that a lot of initiatives come from employees and grow up and really it's their projects, right? And they stand behind them. So we also have a really great sustainability team driving the effort. And I think that it needs to be a little bit of a combination, because when I look sort of at the sustainability journey many organizations went on, they started out saying, but at least let's do something, right? But maybe that something is not so important. Maybe that something is not really what moves the needle. And for me as a CEO, I'm looking at what really has an impact, right? Being in supply chain, 95% of the sustainability issues are in the supply chain, 5% is maybe in the corporate headquarters. So if we do something in the corporate headquarters, maybe it doesn't have that impact. So I am a firm believer in that we need to make decisions based on data, and we cannot fool ourselves. That's why we have these certifications, right? So, I mean, we are ISO 14001 for ISO 14064. We are a member of science-based initiatives. So, you know, there's a lot of different certifications, but it's just such that we don't fool ourselves. It's so easy to get into and saying, okay, but we are doing something. And yes, should we stop plastic bottles? That's probably a good idea, but that may not be the biggest impact we have, each of us. So making it based on facts, you know, my husband is always laughing at me because I believe that broken cookies have no calories, right? It's so easy to fool ourselves, and this is too important a topic to fool ourselves.
Thank you. So the question was impact on employee attraction and retention. Was that it? Yeah. I agree with everything that Ahmed and Hannah have shared. For us, I don't know if I can say it's completely causal, but boy, it's awfully coincidental if it's not causal. I believe that it's had an unbelievable impact on us in a very tight labor pool for our profession. The thing that keeps you from growing is the inability to attract and retain great people. And since we've really become really hyper-focused on sustainability, we've doubled the firm in the last 4 years, which without acquisition. And that has that's kind of the proof in the pudding. That's not the point. The point is to do the right thing, because you want to do the right thing every day. But it's evidence that doing the right thing, especially in today's transparent world, with younger generations in the labor force that really value the values that are incorporated in ESG and CSR and whatever acronyms we use to talk about doing the right thing by all stakeholders. One of the things that I share with people is that people leave jobs, but they don't leave a calling. And when they believe that they're working for a purpose-filled organization, and it's true, if it's not, you get found out pretty quickly. If they believe they're working for a purpose-filled organization, they're likely to stay and try and continue that mission and try and achieve those goals for the community and for the climate and for the world. And I know it's silly maybe for a little company like us. I think we're 400 and something people now, so we're not a big corporation. But you try and make a change where you can. And I believe that the folks that choose to work with us, work for us, are committed to making that change. And as I said at the beginning, I'm really proud to be associated with them and to be allowed to lead the firm in our efforts to make the world a better place.
Did you want to add a quick comment to that? That's okay. I was going to move on to risk mitigation. I might have misread what you mentioned in the chat, but as I opened my comments, I mentioned that ESG risk is financial risk, and implementing certain initiatives can obviously help to mitigate that risk. So how have you seen, Hannah, the implementation of ESG initiatives mitigate risk in your organization?
Well, we can start out.
Yeah, you do a lot.
To some extent, we have our organization and then we have our customers' organization, because what ALAM does is we manage the supply chain for our customers. So all the way from procurement, warehousing, inventory management, production, light contract manufacturing, and distribution. And so if you look at the risk our customers have, we just need to be managing that along with our own risk. Right? And that risk is mainly focused for them about regulations, compliance, and of course, the reputational risk. So What we do is we do a total risk assessment when we onboard the customers, and then we actually do it quarterly, because this is such a dynamic environment with changing regulations and changing situations. I mean, just yesterday we had Porsche come forward and saying that there was one out of their 30,000 parts in their car that had been put on the blacklist for for forced labor. And so now all their Porsches are sitting outside the US and cannot get in, right? That's a huge, huge risk. So that's what we work with our customers to prevent those type of risks by being very vigilant about what's going on in the supply chain. Now, during COVID, that was really during the pandemic supply chain crisis, right? That was really hard because you could not go into factories and see what was going on. And so, you know, I think that we all backslid on the governance side during COVID, and I think we are catching up now. But certainly when it comes to sustainability and sustainability reporting, it's important. So we help our customers with quite a bit of sustainability reporting, and most of our customers do, of course, Scope 1 and Scope 2. Some customers do Scope 3 as well. So we are providing information to them so that they can report accurately. So lots of risk in the supply chain, obviously, both when it comes to environmental, but also when it comes to social, and of course governance, compliance, the oversight, those type of things.
Thanks, John. As a CPA, although you are managing partner now and maybe not in the tactical CPA services, I would think figuring out how to mitigate financial risk is probably also squarely in your wheelhouse. Do you have something to share on that with us?
Yeah, I thought Hannah's answer was excellent, and maybe I'll just share two quick stories that demonstrate the risks that you might not be aware of. And these aren't as dramatic as Porsche not being able to bring in their cars. I had no idea. I drive a Honda Civic, but if I wanted a Porsche, I wouldn't be able to get it. Two stories about things that have happened within our firm. First story is about a company that was actually a pretty good actor, but didn't tell their story well. And because they didn't tell their story well, they didn't get a good grade on a scorecard for a certain buyer that happened to present a huge part of their sales. Jennifer Harity, also on the sustainability team, helped them identify what they were doing and explain it in a way that allowed them to continue to sell to that customer, which essentially the loss of that customer may have ruined the business. About a $90 million business. And it shows you that the risk that they had, not because they weren't doing the right thing, they were doing the right thing. They just didn't know how to tell their story well enough. And so they needed help being able to explain what they were doing. Huge financial risk when you're going to lose 40% of your revenue. Another very small example, but I think these micro things happen every single day. About a year ago, our firm changed its brand. And when you do that in an organization, you got to get new coffee cups and you got to buy new little polo shirts and all the things you do when you rebrand a firm. And our marketing team looked at, they had it narrowed down to 5 vendors. And they were going to spend, I don't know, $500,000, $1 million. So like I said, it's not a big deal, but it's a micro example. And they did some research on the sustainability stories of these companies. And they narrowed it down to 3. There's 2 companies that never even knew they were in the running. But because they either aren't focused on the things that we value in our supply chain, or they didn't tell their story well enough through social media and their website and their reputation, that they missed out on an economic opportunity, and they didn't identify it as a lost opportunity. They just didn't even know. And so I think those 2 things are great examples of how an everyday business, this is really, really an important thing. And if you're not focused on it, you're creating risk, and you may not even be aware of the losses you're sustaining.
I know that switching gears just slightly, that sustainability and ESG initiatives can allow for innovation to become an integral part of the development process. Julian, you previously served as a sustainability director for a large family-owned wine business. Can you share an example with us from your work there around how you implemented some sustainability and how it actually helped foster innovation within the company?
Sure. I think I'm a big proponent of the concept that you can't manage what you don't measure. And when we at the large family-owned wine company that I was with previously, prior to joining Sensiba, when we started our sustainability journey, the focus was on baselining and benchmarking. And one of the initial baselining activities that we did around about 2015 was to do a scope 1, 2, and 3 carbon emissions inventory to really get an organizational understanding of what our carbon footprint or our overall impact was. And the thing that jumped off the page for us when we did this exercise sat in scope 3. So it was an indirect emission source for us. And something that many companies kind of have limited control over their scope 3 emissions. In this particular case for us, it was our glass bottle purchases, which we actually had a pretty decent control over. And when we did the math, we recognized that our glass bottle purchases represented about 20% of the organizational carbon footprint for us. And when we compared not just the carbon footprint implications, but also the cost implications of purchasing glass every year for our wine bottles, we recognized that we could actually make a pretty insignificant kind of on a per bottle basis transition to lighter weight glass that had a pretty significant impact on the overall carbon footprint reduction of our company and also on the economics. So overall, we were able to reduce our emissions impact by about 3 or 4%. While also shaving about $1 million in cost from COGS. So that was kind of one of those areas where we were able to get some internal traction pretty quickly and demonstrate that an emissions reduction and a cost effective impact go hand in hand. And it was one of those kind of self-reinforcing feedback loops that really got the organization more excited about investing in sustainability.
I love that story. So thank you for indulging me, Julian, to share that with the group. I think oftentimes those real world examples, rather than the theory behind it, are super impactful. Ahmed, you have a CPG company. I can't only imagine, especially working with all the CPG companies, that you don't have some additional thoughts to share with us around innovation and sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting word, innovation, around this, and it's kind of like you do have to innovate. You do have to really forge and break the boundaries and break the rules, because a lot of the systems around us aren't necessarily set up to really create change. They're old systems that we inherit through generations prior to us. So we have to always look at things and always ask what if, and how can we make changes, and what does it look like, and how do we then change the systems? Because in some cases, the systems need to change. And some examples for us are really around, one of them's around packaging. We've been trying to create, the first sustainable packaging in the overwraps, which are usually plastic binders and petroleum based. So, we set out 16, 17 years ago, okay, how do we create this? And working with all the municipalities of waste, as well as all the material companies. And, it took us 13 years to get to the point where we were able to create something, but it was definitely constant focus, constant pushing. You just can't let go. It's almost relentless. And to get other people to imagine, what does it look like, and what if, and then even municipality, well, then what do we do with this stuff? So the systems around it are very complicated, and they've been set since the post-industrial time. So it's kind of, we have to recreate the wheel at moments, and we're in that great phase right now where we are creating a lot of them. And even with fair labor, when we started, fair trade and all these certifications didn't exist, but that didn't matter to us. We were still doing it because we cared about the farmers. These are some of the poorest countries in the world we work with in agriculture, in China and India and Madagascar. And so many of these countries have evolved the last 20 years, but some still remain really poor. And we're working with these farmers to create these incredible products and ingredients. And how can we support them? But there weren't systems in place. So we designed something called fair labor practices. And it's a supply chain from farmer all the way to retail, looking at supply chains like what Hana does, to the farmers, to the manufacturing and the production facilities. So we designed with scientific certified services a whole supply chain metrics of how to gauge things and create improvement programs rather than a pass-fail system. So through our fair labor practices, we've been really able to work with the whole supply chain, again, from farmer all the way to the consumer, of how our system's working to make sure that every worker in the supply chain are taken care of and paid fair wages. And even in climate, we became climate neutral around all of our products, and educating our consumer that the largest source of energy is when you boil your water. So, from farmer and the growing to manufacturing, and we put all the different percentages of what a cup of tea equals, but 49% of the energy used to make a hot cup of tea is when you boil your water. So for us, it's a lot about, again, education, pushing the envelope. Same with OSC, starting the climate collaborative. The industry, a natural food industry that attracts 100,000 people a year at the Natural Products Expo, which is happening next week, there was zero talk around climate. So when we brought this forward 9-10 years ago to the industry, we had 1,000 people show up the first day we did Climate Day, and people are like, oh yeah, we actually have a role in this, don't we? And these are big multi-billion-dollar, $50 billion companies, as well as some of us small, $100, $200 million companies. But it was us pioneers, some of the brands that are CEOs in Guayaki, in OSC, like Guayaki and Sambazan and Dr. Bronner's and Nutiva and Numi and many others, and Lotus Foods, we really waved our flag and said, hey guys, there's something we got to do around climate. And now 10 years later, there's 1,000 organizations that have joined. So we got to push the envelope, and we got to ask what if, and open up our eyes and our hearts and our pocketbooks to sometimes sacrifice the bottom line to do something that's more powerful and more long term. So those are some of the things. I can go on for hours around this. Just a few little.
I know you can. I wish we could let you, because I know it's really fascinating to me, and I know to all of us who are here, both on the panel and just the attendees. These examples are real, and Ahmed, you really shined a light on supply chain and mentioned investments are required. I know that those investments also have paydays. And I know there's probably no one better that I know to talk about supply chain than Hannah. So what considerations should be made when integrating ESG into supply chain management with regard to cost savings or operational efficiencies?
Well, thank you, Karen. I think I listened to Ahmed saying, well, there's an investment and there's a cost. Sometimes there's also a gain, right? So, and I think part of it is starting to think about how we're using resources. So let me take you through what we are talking with our customers about when we are talking ESG with them. And with a focus on here the sustainability, because there are other factors in the S and the D. So the first thing we look at is, are we doing things we don't need to do? So minimizing the resources that we are using throughout the supply chain. So for instance, a typical thing, we all remember the time where we said to people, oh, you need to print 100,000 because it's cheaper. And they ended up scrapping 95,000, right? So now we are doing digital print such that we have no waste or very, very minimal waste. How do we minimize the packaging? When you look at what is a big cost, sustainability cost in supply chain, it's having air transporting air. So when you have a package going out, say via UPS, it comes to your doorstep, maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of the box contains air, and that has been transported around. It used up resources. One of the biggest savings we can do is filling up the containers. The containers are right now on average 70% filled up, meaning we are on the container ships you're seeing on all the photos sitting in the Suez Canal or wherever they are, right? 30% of it is just air. And it's very dysfunctional. It's just waiting for an Uber-like solution, right? Where somebody's thinking about more about how can we fill that up better. So we are looking at all the resources where can we take steps out. Then we are looking at suppliers, right? Suppliers is a big because they can insert both risk and certainly also unsustainable practices. So selecting the right suppliers, but also the suppliers that are at the right place. So we are very much into nearshoring. Nearshoring means being close to the market, right? And what people think when they say nearshoring is they think tier 1 suppliers. They are immediate suppliers. But reality is it needs to be the entire supply chain, right? And so in order to minimize how much we are transporting around, we need to get down to the entire supply chain. Then there's also another option that we are calling postponement. That means that we are finishing the finished goods just before shipping. That can cut down on inventory levels, which again is a more sustainable practice. It can also cut down on the air that's shipped around in the supply chain, because again, air is being shipped around as components come in as well. Then, of course, it's optimizing logistics routes, right? So lots of emissions and other sustainability costs in the logistics side. And then there's just looking at waste management, right? Best practices in waste management. What do you do? Especially electronic waste, of course, and hazmat waste, but in general. So what we always do when we sit down with a customer and we see which waste they generate, we are like, how can we use that waste? So if for some of our customers, we have succeeded in doing a circular economy where we are reusing the waste or making it usable in another situation under certain conditions. In one case, we actually got to refurb that waste and give it to as a charitable donation, right? So that was sort of a double feel good, to be honest, right? But putting that thought into the supply chain, looking at both resource efficiency and waste management, really critical. So we sit down with our customers. It's a key part of our quarterly business reviews with each of our customers. It's an agenda item, and we look at their supply chain. We bring them suggestions. So it's an integral part of what we are doing for our customers.
Thanks, Hannah. I love that you brought circularity up, because we'd be remiss if we didn't have a sustainability conversation without specifically mentioning circularity. I know certainly, Ahmed, you referred to it in some of your examples around waste as well. So really amazing discussion so far. We are starting to near our time, so I want to go ahead and open it up to the questions that have come through. Julian, do you want to lead us with that?
Yeah, we had 2 questions come in, and I'll start with the second question actually first. It's related to kind of communicating the sustainability or the business case to customers. So the question from Martina was, in what way do you present the business case for sustainability to customers when they're not always on board or interested in advanced sustainability initiatives? So how do you kind of translate that to an uninterested customer? And I'll open that to the group.
So I've never encountered a customer who is not interested. What people are concerned about is, what is this going to cost me? Right. So there are sort of several ways of looking at that, right? A lot of times, again, But when you think about what are we coming and saying, we're saying, oh, don't ship things triangle. Well, if we can do a direct shipment, then maybe we can not just save on the sustainability account, but also on the financial account. Right? So it's not always, I mean, it certainly happens that there's a cost associated with a sustainability initiative, but a lot of times there's also a saving. So now people need to go, I mean, we deal with supply chain people, they need to maybe go to their marketing people and say, can we change the look of this product or the packaging of this product, and do we need the gold foil, and those type of things that may be an uncomfortable discussion for them, but we give them all the ammo to do so, and a lot of times also some savings.
Yeah, I'll share a moment of that, and it is tough because we have had customers come at us, especially probably more 10, 15 years ago, but big brands, and I won't mention them, but, in the hospitality space, hotel chains, even some big retail chains that have wanted us to create products for them. But under whether private label or special items, and they're not interested potentially in organic or fair trade. They want the lowest price, and it does become difficult. And I would consider those customers. There are, I would also consider customers or vendors also customers, that don't necessarily want to comply or find a solution to something that is in our sustainable metrics of what we're looking to do, whether it's through our packaging initiatives or ingredients or supply chain. And it becomes difficult. And and when it comes to customers, we will turn down the business. If, no matter what the volume is, if it's millions and millions of dollars for this one customer, but they want something that's non-organic, that is very poor quality, we'll just say, we're not the right partner for you. And, we'll offer them what we can, and based on our metrics. And this goes back 15, 20 years ago. This is not just the last 5, 10 years, but this goes back into the mid 2000s, and where, some of these ESG metrics weren't as well known, especially in the hospitality space or in the restaurant industry. And we're always celebrate those that have been committed, and those have been the right partners. And the times are catching up. People are obviously more aware and more creating more responsibility around their decisions. So it's always the right time, and to be patient and wait for those to embrace all that we're speaking to, because it is why we're all here, and what we're looking to in the future.
Thank you. I know certainly in the work that we do, it's important to meet people where they're at and kind of recognize that. And so we can shift the conversation gently without shifting our priorities, our values, right? That came through loud and clear. So we are just about at time, but we would like to go ahead and address the last question briefly before we do a wrap. Understanding if people need to drop, we understand, but we'd love to at least address this last question very quickly.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it ends us off where we started, really with people. So the question is around how you as a leader prioritize the initiatives that your employees suggest. And do employees present their proposals with a set of impact metrics? And ultimately, how do you decide on the metrics and what to accelerate within the organization?
John, I saw you unmute. You've been quiet for just a little bit. Do you want to share something on that?
Sure. Yeah, we believe that you don't need a title to be a leader. Leadership at every level. If somebody's got a passion for something, it makes sense. We have to budget for it to make sure that we can do it effectively. And it may not happen immediately, because it may need to take a little bit more time, but we look for answers and input and provide a variety of ways to do that, both in person and anonymously. We have 3 different anonymous channels for people to give us feedback. We have red flag reporting that many large public companies use to make sure that if we're not doing something, or somebody thinks that we're not doing something correctly, we can get that feedback and they can give it to us without any fear of retribution or identification. So there's a lot of ways that we do that. Now I'm going to answer a question you didn't ask me. Just as I'm listening to this conversation, I just get so excited. I heard Ahmed say, sometimes you got to be willing to spend the money and forego, current profits. And as I'm thinking about that and listening to Hannah as well, I'm thinking, Milton Friedman can be seen as the devil with his shareholder primacy philosophy. And I think we're coming back to that. Why do you need to do the right thing? How do you convince a customer that doesn't believe in it that it's the right thing? Because your enterprise value is going to be damaged. You're going to damage your long-term value of your organization if you don't maybe sacrifice. And in some cases, and in Julian's example, you're not sacrificing current profits. You're actually reducing the amount of glass, saving money, and doing the right thing. So the fact that these are mutually exclusive in some way is still kind of hanging over our business environment. And as I'm sitting here listening, I'm thinking Milton Friedman would probably be very excited about all these investments that companies are making, because if you really want to have long-term shareholder value, you're going to have to do the right thing by your people, by the planet, all the way around. So anyway, it just occurred to me, and I can't have an unexpressed thought, as you know, Karen. So I apologize for jumping in there.
No, that's good. It's fine. And I know, Hannah, you had mentioned earlier that you had some thoughts specifically to this question as well.
Yeah, I do. I most definitely do. But I agree that I think that there's some real big value in rethinking the supply chain and how we do business, right? And it's a thing all leaders should think about on a regular basis. How are we doing business? What is it we are doing on a deeper level? And I think that's where, when you go in and you look at waste in the supply chain and you optimize the supply chain, you get a lot of financial gains also. And so I do believe that that's a good byproduct. But back to the poor question that we're not answering here. So the question was, how do we optimize? How do we react to employee suggestions? So we actually have a group, an employee group, looking at all the employee suggestions, and we have a reward system for the best suggestions. Not only do we implement them, we also implement a fair amount of the ones that do not get awards. But in the end, we are very focused on how can we direct our actions such that they have the most impact. And again, we're looking at our customer supply chain, we're looking at our own supply chain, because that's really where the big impact is. But still, of course, cherishing the suggestions coming up, it's part of creating an innovation culture, is to reward and recognize contributions that come up via those systems. And like as previously was mentioned, we also have, of course, kind of a whistleblower, a suggestion, a way for people to bring up issues that they're seeing that are not being addressed appropriately. And we think that's very important. But innovation, we really cherish it, whether in ESG or in other areas.
Thank you, Hannah. So all amazing and important things. It's exciting to hear how much is going on in this space. I think sometimes this topic can be politicized. People are afraid to talk about it. So I appreciate everyone on this call being leaders in this area. We did have another question or two that came in through the chat. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So we will make sure that our panelists get these questions. We'll get you some answers afterward, and make sure that you have felt that you were heard today. We would like to actually finish with one very quick, brief question, which is, what's one takeaway for CEOs who are looking to start this journey? Maybe they haven't even begun. What's a takeaway for them? Hannah, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it's the biggest takeaway is the big why. But then there's the other thing, that when we started the journey, we were really the only ones on a journey like that. There are not a lot of other people, right? And today there's a lot of support, whether you call Karen or you call some peers, you go on webinars like this. There are lots of organizations. So I'd say find out what your why is, manage to that, and then if you go on the journey, avail yourself of the resources and the networks that are out there.
Thanks. John.
Go. My advice is go. Get started. Start now.
Great. Perfectly succinct since you jumped in earlier. Ahmed.
Yeah, I mean, it's dream big, you know, think big. Don't be afraid to push the boundaries. Always ask what if, and challenge everyone. But take small steps to get there, because it's not going to happen overnight. We got to the moon, but you know, maybe the cavemen and women one day were like, "What's that?" And you know, thousands of years later, we made it there. So you know, you always gotta create your North Stars and strive for them, because they will only happen if you really put the attention and focus on it.
Awesome. Well, that is a wrap. Thank you all for attending today. We will be providing a recording of this session, as we mentioned at the start, to all registrants in the coming days. And we do welcome your inquiries about how we might be able to help you measure, manage, and report your sustainability impacts. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.